So this is the slightly belated Wintersday video, the companion piece to that big balance episode we did earlier in the week. And so the devs have kind of given Wintersday the same treatment that Halloween had here in 2017. And there's a lot of fun things to talk about, especially one of the general changes that is kind of a great update for RPers. And I know what you're probably thinking right now. Okay, WP, there's barely any RPers left in Guild Wars 2. RPing's boring, or you don't understand it, or whatever. But I think it is pretty nice. It's to do with outfits and town clothes. So let's just jump straight in with it. You can see in the background what they've done. Many of you won't be aware of this, but there are certain items in the game called clothing tonics. And there are a few varieties, but as tonics, they were obviously limited. What they would do is change your character to wear kind of commoner, RP, regular fantasy clothing that wasn't too flashy or crazy. It was just, you know, normal, nice clothes that, again, a lot of RPers would enjoy using. The thing with these tonics that was kind of cool, though, is they're tonics, but they don't fully change your character. Like, you'll still be your toon with your toon's hair and skin and race and all of that. It's just it will put a certain kind of clothes on you. This actually already is a weird system as tonics, because that is left over from an old system way back in 2012 or even 13 that was just the town clothing system. You know kind of how when you're doing your dyes you can tab over to mounts these days? Well, there used to be kind of a similar thing in the UI, but for town clothes versus your regular clothes. It was actually one of the landmark things they were talking about before the game came out. I still remember that blog post very clearly. Anyway, they turned into tonics, and people kind of didn't like them. Tonics are obviously limited in that you can't fight with them or do several things. During Season 3, when the Kodan tonic came to the game, the embiggening tonic, the small tonic, this idea of combat tonics, many people started asking the devs, hey, why don't you make these town clothes tonics combat tonics, and then look, they're kind of like proper clothes again. But the devs didn't do that, and I think the answer is now apparent why. Because now, after Path of Fire, they've taken those tonics and turned them into outfits. And outfits, I know they're fun to rag on and hate on, but outfits are even better than combat tonics for one specific department that's very relevant for Path of Fire, and that's mounts. So now you can do basically anything you want if you have one of these tonics, because you can turn it into one of the outfits. You can see the TP in the background right now, all the varieties. I think it's something like 16 new outfits have come to the game. All of them are purchasable, on the trading post. Some of them can be quite expensive, but I mean, that's a big bump up of the number of different outfits regular players who want to avoid the gem store and stuff can go for. Obviously, if you use the gem store and convert your credit card into gold, you'll get it anyway, but hey, that's kind of a thing with everything in Guild Wars. So yeah, loads of new tonics, and kind of one of the big cool new baseline things that has come to the game. Something I'm pretty happy about. There's been some other stuff which I'll whiz through, because mostly I want to talk about Wintersday, and some of this is quite boring, honestly, to me. But the new map, Istan, I don't know if you guys were doing any of the multi-loot. There was crazy farm there, this Brandstone gathering mechanic, which I still fully don't understand, but they've added a daily cap to that. So as far as I understand, that kind of kills a lot of what people were doing on the new map. I'm sure there's still profit there, and if you guys watch my coverage of the Domain of Istan, you'll know that there's so much stuff going on with that map anyway, but that at least has changed. Maybe someone in the comments can enlighten me as to how low that daily cap is. And then they did some other changes to do with Living World rewards and things. Rose Quartz can no longer be sold to vendors. They fixed a bug in Lake Doric with one of the stalling mechanics from the previous season, stuff like that. There's also this interesting patch note here under general changes. Added a small but tasty reward for successful test participants in the Proxemics Lab Guild puzzle. Right. So change to get one of the guild puzzles. You guys know me, I think that this game desperately needs to look back at its guild missions and its guild infrastructure and plug more content into it, because it's so good, but to many people doing guild missions is a bit of a chore. So I'm really happy that there's something here with guild missions, but I don't know what this is necessarily. The Proxemics Lab, if I remember correctly, this is the one where you're in Brisbane and at the end it's a big maze. Now, when that originally came out, the chest at the end of this guild puzzle was a big block of cheese, like a wedge of cheese that you could interact with. And then I think sometime around the Heart of Thorns days, they changed that into just a regular chest, and that made me very sad. So what, has it gone back to the cheese chest now? Have they given us cheese in the reward? I don't know. I've not played it because I've got so little reason to do guild missions. Sad face right now. But there you have it. Maybe the comments can fill us in there too. Another Heart of Thorns change that I'm very happy to see. Hylex Shadow Leapers So these are the very limble Itzel that jump around. These no longer passively evade on ranged attacks, or a proportion of ranged attacks that come at them. So this was a mechanic I didn't even really understand because I played so much Ellie during the Heart of Thorns days. But yeah, if you've ever played a projectile-based character, like a lot of Guardians will have because they just got the Dragon Hunter specialization during Heart of Thorns, these guys were just passively evading all of that. It was something I only very recently became aware of when I went back to the jungle on a pistol Deadeye very recently. And I actually found it really quite profound and interesting playing such a heavy projectile-based build, and for that reason I really liked that gameplay. But I can imagine people's frustration here. So these enemies are a little bit more boring now, I suppose, but more tolerable, even if many of us have moved on from the jungle at this point. There'll be people going back to Heart of Thorns once they've had their Path of Fire feel, but who are new to the franchise in total, and I guess they'll like that. And last of all that I'll pick out for super general changes, Radiation Field. There was a racial skill rebalance here. Those who watched the balance video will know, but basically the devs are trying to introduce a bit more ramp to condies. So many condies in the game no longer hit so hard instantly, but last longer. I like this, and apparently they've done that for Radiation Field as well. The poison duration has been adjusted from 2 stacks for 3 seconds to 1 for 6. And that's amazing to me, honestly. Not many... if I use Radiation Field, it's mostly for the weakness, but it's good to see them doing that. I still want more direction for that part of the game, but hey. Alright, then there's PvP. Now, the most that I've been playing Guild Wars at the moment is not Wintersday stuff, though that will be what you're looking at mostly in the background, is actually PvP. I got bit by the PvP bug this week, and if I'm not doing competition judging, I've been doing random queues. It's been a lot of fun. There have been some slight changes over there. So there's a new weapon set coming to both World vs. World and PvP. They're the Obsidian weapons. I'm not sure if I talked about it on a video yet, but there was a dev post and we've definitely mentioned it on streams. The Obsidian weapon set is not a full set yet. The devs seem to be experimenting with something where they haven't made all the various versions of weapons. They've made just a few. And common ones, certainly, but they've made just a few, and then hopefully they'll plug more in later. I actually really like this, just to hone in on that straight away. If the devs do that, and find that the player base likes it and they're worthwhile rewards anyway, I actually think that frees them up a lot for a lot of different things, and especially if they find that works well, that could mean good things for the future of elite specializations when it comes to adding entirely new weapons to the game. Because if you think about it, one of the main reasons I would guess the devs have held off from adding great axes and whips and spears and so on for new elite specializations is because if they resolve to only ever add new skins and things, and it has to be the entire set at a time, then that gets exponentially more difficult the more new varieties of weapons they add. So now, if they start testing the water, hey, can we add a weapon set, but it's not everything, it's just a handful, 4 or 5 of them, and the player base really likes it, that frees them up in the future. So, I don't know, maybe I'm thinking too long term there, but I like this. Hopefully people enjoy the Obsidian weapons, and they are special in that they change the way they look depending on which borderland in World vs. World you're in. So they also are acquirable in PvP, but I just don't think they do anything special there. And you can get them for some of the tournaments. But in World vs. World, if you're in the green borderland, they'll look different to if you were in the red, and so on. And I like that. I think that's pretty interesting. Hopefully that adds some more. We've seen some versions of this in the past, like with day-night weapons. And here we've got this set. That's the Obsidian weapon set. Also, by the way, perhaps an interesting set because, of course, the most prestige, premium, crazy thing to get in Guild Wars 1 was not Obsidian weapons, but it was Obsidian armor. And now we've got Obsidian weapons in GW2, and they're kind of a World vs. World PvP thing. Another thing as well, obviously, for the Wintersday month with the automated tournaments, there's a new Champions Winter Crown, which only the people who win the monthly automated tournament will get. So that'll be 10 players worldwide, and the laurels from the previous month have gone away. So there you go, that's general stuff. Let's talk about Wintersday itself. First, you got Divinity's Reach and the decorations. And they've been updated. They're a lot more dense, and they cover a lot more of the area now. Some people have actually been complaining their frames have dropped a bit, but I kind of like when the game keeps pushing, and if it's a little bit more taxing on our systems in 2017 than when it was being developed in 2010, I think that's kind of okay that they keep on pushing it like so. But yeah, there's new decorations. And this is especially important if you think about it because mounts are in the game, which have offered so much more freedom of movement around the map. And especially DR, going up on all those roofs and things where clearly the devs never originally anticipated us to go. But flying around on the Griffin, They've even got a note here on the patch notes that suggests that you can get up to the Infinararium. I've not tried to do that yet, but maybe you can even climb on top of the airship. That would be really wild. Again, maybe I should check that out and try it in the background, though. I don't want you guys to just be watching me fumbling around. But there's new decorations, and the place has had a bit of a touch-up generally. Then there's some other big sweeping changes. Do you remember how Halloween they changed the achievements to 3 different categories? One category was super repeatable, continual stuff. Another one is for doing a variety of content and getting the armor, the new Halloween armor that they added. And then finally there was another section representing more long-term stuff, but again, doing a spread of the content. Well, you got the same thing here for Wintersday. There are now 3 separate sections. If, like me, you've done previous Wintersday, you might notice that several of them have already finished, but you've got the new festivals one, which will be mostly what I will be working on. So they did that fundamentally. Wintersday's a bit more readable, what you can do there and where it all is because of this category thing. But they added some new things as well. Do you remember how Halloween added a race to the labyrinth? Oh, you do? Well, guess what they did with Wintersday? Same thing. There's a new race. This race, obviously, though, doesn't have the luxury of being in, like, a labyrinthine area. There is no Wintersday realm, necessarily, unless we count going inside those giant snow globes. But it's Divinity's Reach, so there is a race in DR. Even better, if you don't own Path of Fire, they do have a mount renting system also. Some people were peeved by this at Halloween in that they hadn't bought the new expansion, they were free-to-play people or whatever, and they felt like they were missing out. Well, those people now can, for free, without even having to get the expansion, try out mounts. And maybe they'll have so much fun on it, they'll want to get the X back in the end or whatever. But even that's there too. And I think there's a funny thing as well where one of the racing participant NPCs jumps the starting line, which is kind of cool. So lots to do in DR itself. You've got the orphans to run and so on. I will just add here, after making the video, but having now done the race is awesome. It's a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. And there's like a Choya that participates in the race dressed as a Wintersday present. Really fantastic. It took me a while to figure out where it started or when, because obviously they only come on certain pulses. But there's an achievement to walk on the race. There's an achievement to do it multiple times. And if you're quick enough, you can do 2 in one go. And obviously, one of the things people really like about the Path of Fire races is that Zephyrite airship music, which comes quite a lot. They seem to have really good, is it potentially totally new Wintersday music that was scored here during the race? It's fantastic. Just give it a listen and see what you think, because I was over the moon with it.
You'll take one look at me across a crowded square.
Then there's the jumping puzzle. If you remember, the jumping puzzle before this year was kind of 3 separate routes. But each of the 3 separate routes were about on par difficulty-wise. I always had the same one I went to every time, and that's the far right route. I never properly assessed the other 2. I just always did the same one because that was my muscle memory. That's what I knew. And usually, each time Wintersday comes round, I don't want to spend ages relearning a ton of stuff. So I just stick with the old familiar. Well, the devs have changed it, and in a fairly substantial way. The different routes are now different difficulty levels. And I quote from the patch notes here, ranging from the sedate and scenic Quaggan route to the fast-paced gingerbread route. And they also say that adventurers will face colder temperatures and less stable platforms on the harder routes, but they will find greater rewards waiting for them at the end of the climb. Several bugs and timing issues have also been addressed, making a safer experience for all participants. Now, apparently, this is a ridiculous karma farm. Wintersday was already reasonably known for karma, I think. Well, apparently this is really insane. So if you want to hoard tons of karma by doing this really difficult JP here, or the hardest of the modes, over and over and over again, so that then that carries you through, then go for it. Myself, I very rarely care about karma. I started to definitely at the end of Season 3 after I spent a lot on those rewards. And another season filled with intense karma rewards might put some pressure there. And you can kind of save up and stockpile for now. But I think this is really nice to do such a radical change. Who knows, perhaps next year they'll pick another element of Wintersday and do something similar. Maybe the Guitar Hero minigame area, the bells of Wintersday, or even there's snowball fights. And I mean, there's a rich history of snowball fights for this franchise. People used to adore those. We do have like a tournament structure thing going on with PvP now. Could we do that? I actually think it's reasonably well balanced as well, the GW2 version. That just leads me to want the old idea of being able to matchmake and queue from Heart of the Mists into festival activities when they're up. But, hey, perhaps we're getting a bit off of track. So another big change for Wintersday, possibly as big as the whole 3-tier achievement thing. We now also have a big difference with the currency, Snowflakes. So Snowflakes, you remember, it used to be lots of different tiers and they were slottable into gear and so on. Well, that has all been revamped to act just like the Halloween stuff. The candy corn. So you've got candy corn for most purchases, and then candy corn can turn into candy corn cobs, and the cobs are for prestige things. Well, Wintersday's basically become that. You've got snowflakes, and then snow diamonds, I think they are. And all the old snowflakes you now just convert into the new type 1-for-1. So there's a bit of a weird pricing thing there where really crappy old snowflakes could convert, even though the most expensive flawless ones will still be worth the same amount. But the idea here is to just standardize things. And in fact, Alexander Youngblood, one of the devs, went to the forums to explain this a little bit further, and I'll just read the quote out here. 3 years ago, I made it my mission to make Wintersday rewards much more simple, straightforward, and fun. The objective was to remove the excessive number of items that were hard to get rid of in favor of items that were either fun to use or were actually useful in some way. I'm proud of the improvements we've made in the past, but snowflakes continued to bother me. As you're probably aware, we started improving snowflakes by making them upgradable through double click. That simplified a few things, but it also created some inventory annoyance. And what he's talking about there is like when you salvage, then it would accidentally salvage them back down. This year, we have made even more improvements that will help you to spend much less time managing your inventory and more time having fun. There will now be just 2 types of snowflakes, which will mirror that of the way candy corn works. All snowflakes acquired previously now convert into the common snowflake, and you can convert 1,000 common ones into the snow diamond. Thanks for your support, and I hope you have a wonderful Wintersday. So these are the kind of great changes that I like to see, and I think this did have the side effect of meaning last year's new set of decorations for the Guildhall, which were those big snow blocks. If you guys were watching last year, you'll know we did a ridiculous drive of thousands and thousands and thousands of them. I think, at least at the start of the festival, those became really quite a bit more expensive, so be aware of that. Moving on, speaking of decorations, well, it wouldn't be a good festival without more new decorations. This will be the last thing I talk about here today. And you can see in the background one of the Spud Guild halls. What you're actually looking at is a race course that some of our event helpers and GMs ran. A really cool event. And what you'll notice here are these giant present blocks. Yeah, those are new decorations. They are enormous, and they're actually really reasonable to get as well. They're not just big either, but they got this interesting like glowy thing going on. And then there's also snow mounds. So we always had snow piles. They came in right at the start of Heart of Thorns, and they're not that great, especially with considering local cap and so on. But you got snow mounds, and they cover like a bigger spread of an area, and they're also a pretty fun upgrade too. I love the decoration things. I'm not really in the decoration groove at the moment, and the scribing groove at the moment. When I do get into that, I end up going really kind of crazy with it, and you hear me talking about it in a billion videos. Right now, I'm more sort of PvP focused, but these are pretty fun to see as well, and I really like how consistently they've kept putting new decorations in on the festivals. So yeah, that's Wintersday. That's the general changes. Again, I will remind you, just as I said at the start of the video, there was a huge balance pass as well, and there was even a further balance pass to some of the changes there, like merciful intervention is now a lot weaker. But yeah, so if you want to check that out, that was one of the most recent videos I did on the channel. I'll see you guys very soon. Still plenty to talk about with Istan. And let me know if there's anything I've missed here on Wintersday. And I will be back, hopefully, very shortly. Cheers, guys. See you soon.